Hey everyone, this will be a provocative and spicy video. I'll start by addressing a question from one of our subscribers. I've studied with two teachers from Ukraine and Russia, and they both told me to lift my fingers as high as possible when practicing. Is this common in the Russian piano school? Great question. Let's dive into it. First of all, let's talk about this idea of national piano schools. You might have heard claims like, only Russian piano school pianists can produce a singing tone, or only they can play expressively. Honestly, I find these statements a little bit over the top. While there are many fantastic pianists from Eastern Europe, the term Russian piano school is often used as a kind of cultural branding. Think Matryoshka dolls, bears, babushka, vodka, balalaikas, and Russian piano school. The qualities we associate with great piano playing, singing tone, rich expression, legato, rubato, were promoted everywhere. Johann Sebastian Bach championed legato. Chopin revolutionized the art of singing tone on the piano, and Mendelssohn valued singing on piano so much that he composed dozens of songs without words for piano solo. Let's look at some figures often associated with the so-called Russian piano school. Anton Rubinstein. He got his first lessons from his mother, Clara Levenstein, who wasn't ethnically Russian, obviously, if you look at the surname, and came from Prussia. Anton Rubinstein later studied with Alexander Villon, or Villon, I'm not sure actually, sorry, French people, the son of French immigrants who had studied under Irish pianists John Field and German pianist Franz Xavier Gebel. Nikolai Zverev, a renowned, fantastic teacher who mentored pianists like Rachmaninoff, Scriabin, Igumnov, and many other fantastic pianists. Zverev studied with Alexander Dubuc, the son of a French immigrant who also studied under John Field and Adolf von Henselt, a German pianist. Heinrich Neuhaus, one of the most famous music teachers, known for teaching Gilels and Richter. Neuhaus was born in what's now Ukraine, had Prussian roots, and was influenced by Polish composer Szymanowski and Felix Blumenfeld. Felix Blumenfeld, another iconic figure in the so-called Russian piano school, in turn studied with German pianist Theodor Stein. See the pattern? The so-called Russian piano school is actually a blend of various cultures and influences, where the founding fathers of it obtained their education with European teachers actually, which is not surprising at all given that a piano, along most other technically sophisticated objects, wasn't invented in Eastern Europe. Now, back to the original question about lifting fingers high. I've studied with 5 teachers who could be categorized under the Russian piano school label because all of them studied in Moscow at some point, and none of them advocated for such technique. In fact, lifting fingers excessively can lead to injuries, and we have spoken about this in the video on Taubman approach and its pros and cons, so check it out. And I'm not as paranoid as some right-wing Taubman specialists who say that lifting fingers must be forbidden at all, but if you are a healthy, strong pianist, lifting fingers a little may help to get more brilliance and articulation, what is perfectly demonstrated by pianists like Emil Gilels. However, I actually suggest to students to develop an ability to practice by also letting their relaxed fingers to stay at the keys. Not lifting the fingers at all, but just practice relaxing them properly, because many people lift the fingers too much, gaining more static tension in the fingers than necessary, and this applies to the vast majority of piano learners. So, everything can be a cure, and the poison depends on a particular student, but lifting the fingers as high as possible, while it might improve clarity instantly, the long-term risks aren't worth it. And here, Taubman specialists are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, some teachers prioritize immediate results over students' well-being, dismissing those who get injured as not talented enough. So these teachers have a kind of a following mindset. Practice this way, lift your fingers, train your fingers a lot. I don't care whether there are any risks to that because I don't bother learning about piano playing safety and physiology. And if you injure yourself, you just leave my studio as a not talented enough. This is what is so tragically common in the professional piano education in all the countries, not just Eastern Europe. This is very common in many other countries around the world. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, some teachers focus so much on preventing injuries that they stop even strong, healthy pianists from making perfectly safe movements, holding back their growth as musicians. That said, teaching methods can vary widely, even among students of the same teacher. For example, my wife, Alina, and another professor, let's call them Professor X, both studied under the same mentor. Alina emphasizes proper technique. She's actually very, very good in setting up a proper technique. That's why I have included her lessons into my biggest piano efficiency course, because she has her own methods which are very, very effective. And she has a rigorous approach to classical styles like Mozart and Beethoven. And our Professor X has a quite different taste stylistically and doesn't focus on technique and dismisses students' pain complaints, saying to students who come with pain complaints that it's too late to change technique anyway, so kind of just bear with it. So even within close circles, people who have studied with the same mentor, with the same teacher, they may have completely different attitudes, philosophies, and approaches. So the question is, can we really define national schools and make general assumptions when there is such diversity in teaching methods? Write me in comments, please. I'm curious to know what you think about it. And are these schools truly national? For example, during the Russian Empire or Soviet era, many talented musicians from various republics such as Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Armenia, and many others, those are actually, if you didn't know, very different ethnicities, nations, mentalities, and the best pianists from all those different countries, they all had to move to either Moscow or at least St. Petersburg for better opportunities, as this imperial system has always drained the provinces for the sake of the capital's prosperity. This centralization created the illusion that all great Soviet pianists were Russian and that all of them came from two cities, basically. Which, if you read biographies of those people, oftentimes is just not the case. Fast forward to today, people immigrate constantly, and cultures blend in ways that make it difficult to tie someone to a specific school. For example, I've never lived in Russia, but I studied with 5 teachers who trained in Moscow at some point. 3 of them were born in Ukraine with some other roots such as Jewish and Greek, and 1 was Georgian, and all of them had a quite different approach, sometimes ridiculously opposite. So when one teacher would praise my performance, the other one would just criticize it very much. So why does this all matter? Because art and politics are intertwined. Thinking otherwise is naive, in my personal opinion. If you don't define your identity, it might be defined for you. Take Sergei Bortkiewicz, for example. His case shows how messy national identities can be. Bortkiewicz was born in what is now Ukraine, into a Polish family, but had to move to Russia, obviously, since Ukraine was suppressed both culturally and economically. Then he had to flee from Soviets to Germany, and later he had to flee from fascists to Austria. So basically he was just escaping misery and crap of every country for the whole life, and still died broke and miserable. A very tragical life, actually. And unfortunately, none of those countries took a good care of him. But now, since he's dead, everyone wants him on their side of the barricades. For example, on the Ukrainian Wikipedia, he is called a Ukrainian composer, obviously, because he was born in what is now Ukraine. On the German Wikipedia, they describe him very pedantically as a composer of Polish origin, born in what is now Ukraine, culturally Russian, who spent most of his time in Germany and Austria, very pedantically. But the most interesting and kind of amusing thing is how Russian Wikipedia treats him. Because a year ago, Bortkiewicz was listed as a Russian composer. I've seen it with my own eyes, which caused some Ukrainians to challenge this. Rather than admit his Ukrainian heritage, Russian Wikipedia decided to just avoid it altogether. So now they say that he had Polish roots without mentioning his nationality at all. It's like, oh guys, let's just not go there. Let's not mess around it. So this whole mess of labels shows how complicated it is actually to define someone's identity in such a politically charged context, when even the most basic identities are disputed and the most iconic figures have such a multicultural background. So next time you hear someone claim that only a particular national school can produce a certain sound or technique, take it with a grain of salt. Music transcends borders, and great artistry comes from a blend of influences, not just one tradition. Thanks for watching this, and keep exploring the rich tapestry of musical traditions out there.